people talk about, I hear it everywhere, the formidable ground game of the Democrats. Thanks to Barack Obama, this juggernaut was put in place, and that they're just better at it than the Republicans. Now, Scott Pressler, my first guest, who's like holed up in Pennsylvania only, says he's changing that in Pennsylvania. Just give me like the 30,000 foot perspective on that notion as we start.
Yep. Well, so the way to understand it is that, yes, the Democrats have a very powerful ground game. It's really two different tracks. On the one hand, you have the Harris-Walz campaign with all of their offices in battleground states across the country. There's more than 250 offices that the campaign has opened up. They have almost 2,000 staff on the ground. And then there's the second track, which is progressive grassroots groups. A lot of these groups have really scaled up since 2016. After that election, people felt like, wow, like, we clearly need to invest a lot more in mobilizing our voters since that election was lost by such a razor-thin margin in 2016. And that progressive ground game has a lot going for it, hundreds of different groups, but is underfunded significantly.
So they don't, that money that she gets, that she's taken in, the stats are her campaign had raised $690 million, but she also has PAC money of hundreds of millions from the PAC. So does that not go to any of those progressive ground game groups? Is that all just Harris campaign money?
Yeah, so if you think about what the money that's raised by the Democratic establishment groups is spent on, that would be, the Harris-Walz campaign, the different candidates who are running in the states, like Senate candidates, and also those super PACs, like Future Forward, which is the main super PAC supporting Harris. A lot of that money goes to advertising. It goes to fighting the air war, right? TV ads, digital ads, big expenses in that. Hundreds of millions of dollars that's going to that air war. But some also goes quite a bit this year to that ground game that Harris-Walz campaign has with those couple hundred field offices. However, the campaign does not share its money with these progressive grassroots groups. It's not like, hey, here's $50 million and go turn out Latino voters in Arizona or Black voters in Georgia. That's not really the way things work, in part because there's legal restrictions for such funding transfers. A big part of the problem is the choices that donors make. Most Democratic donors don't know much about these progressive grassroots groups that are doing vital work in communities. And so they just give money to the Harris-Walz campaign and to the future PACs that they're familiar with.
Mm-hmm. How do you know how your numbers stack up against the Republicans? That I didn't ask Scott that in terms of offices and staffers.
Yeah, well, that has been a subject of a lot of investigation and confusion. I think that the extent of the Republican ground game is unknown, and there's not a lot of transparency there. There's a number of different ground game groups on the Republican side that are working to elect Trump. The Trump campaign itself doesn't have a strong ground game. It's largely outsourced that work to groups like America PAC, which is Elon Musk-backed group, Turning Point Action, which is the sort of C4 arm of Turning Point USA. The Koch network, Americans for Prosperity, they have a ground game, but it's largely focused on the Senate side. Trump 47 we hear a lot about, but we don't get a lot of hard and fast numbers. Politico just published a major article on this recently, where they went out and talked to a lot of Republican operatives in different battleground states, and those people said, "Hey, we're not seeing a lot of evidence of this Republican ground game. We're very concerned, particularly about how that might affect down ballot candidates who are running in these states." So it's kind of a mystery.
Mm-hmm. Who normally runs herd on it? Would it typically have been the RNC and the DNC, like in years past, or like who's normally in charge?
Well, normally you have the RNC and the presidential nominee working in close concert to field a strong campaign ground game. That's certainly what you have on the Democratic side. The the ground game that Harris-Walz has put together is controlled by the Harris-Walz campaign. It's quite extensive, as I mentioned, and in turn, there's coordination between the Harris-Walz campaign and the DNC and state Democratic parties, which play an important role here too. Like in Wisconsin, for example, the Democratic State Party of Wisconsin has raised over $30 million for its operations, including a lot of field work. So in the best case scenario, you have these national Democratic campaigns and parties working very close in coordination with state parties and down ballot candidates, including in Senate races. There's Senate races in almost all the battleground states. And we're not seeing that on the Republican side this year that we can make out.
So basically, it's a big mystery. It's like a mystery on the Republican side. What groups exactly are playing? What efforts do they have in place to get out the ground game? And you could be overwhelmed on Election Day with, wow, it was amazing. How did they keep that a secret? Yeah. Or you could be underwhelmed and thinking, well, it's just as disorganized and in disarray as we suspected.
There's going to be a lot of surprises, I'm sure, as there have been in past elections, particularly that 2016 election. And keep in mind that Trump's own theory of turnout, as best we can tell, is that he is the ground game, right? He's the person who inspires a lot of low propensity voters on the Republican side to get out and vote. I mean, remember, a lot of what effective ground game does is it goes after those people who may or may not vote or who need persuasion to vote for your party, right? So you want to put your effort into those kinds of people. And Trump's theory has been that, hey, people are so anxious, eager for a different kind of candidate, somebody like me, that they'll come out and vote for the first time in years. And that's not a theory without foundation. I mean, it certainly worked for him in 2016. And in 2020, he increased his vote share, his number of votes by 13 million over his 2016 tally. But the concern of many Republicans is, with these razor thin margins, every single vote counts, and you can't leave any votes on the table. I mean, remember, if you had switched around 42,000 votes in the last election, Trump would have won. I mean, Biden won that election in the Electoral College very narrowly, 10,000 votes or so in Arizona, 11,000 in Georgia. I mean, this is where your ground game really kicks in if those are the kinds of margins you're looking at.
What you guys do is positively vital to what's going to happen in this election. There's a lot of responsibilities. Do you owe back taxes? Are your tax returns still unfiled? Did you forget to file for an extension? The October 15th deadline is fast approaching and time is running out. If you have not gathered all of your documents or made any estimated payments, you could soon be targeted by the IRS. After October 15th, the IRS can garnish your wages, freeze your bank accounts, or even seize your property. That's the bad news. The good news is there's help available. Tax Network USA, a nationwide tax firm, has helped taxpayers save more than $1 billion in tax debt. They have filed over 10,000 tax returns and assisted thousands in reducing their tax burdens. And they can help you too. Don't wait. Visit tnusa.com/Megyn or call 1-800-958-1000 for a free consultation. They will guide you through a few simple questions to determine how much you can save. Take action now before it's too late. Visit tnusa.com/Megyn or call 1-800-958-1000. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.